My name's Dave Anderson. I've been given permission to share and discuss, explore, explain essentially just one story, and that's Marion's. I gave her my word that excuse me, that I would tell her story authentically, respectfully, and factually. It's my intention to compassionately just do that. In order to do so, this story will have to be broken down into segments, into different videos. Primarily for Marion. This should not be an overwhelming experience for her, but it's a huge story. It's a complicated story. It's just like any other of our stories. And you don't want to re-traumatize anyone in the process of telling the story. So we're going to do it in small increments. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off with an apology. That being said, I want you to know that I ripped this off of survivingstraightincorporated.com. Sorry, Chris. January 1, 2009, an apology letter to survivors of Straight Incorporated from a former executive staff member. This letter is in response to the Straight Incorporated survivors letter requesting acknowledgement and apology. My name is Richard Mullinex. From 1985 to 1989, I was a staff member at Straight Incorporated, a drug and alcohol treatment facility for adolescents. If my memory serves me correctly, the dates, locations, and positions of my employment were as follows. Fall of 1985 to the spring of fall of 1985, he was group staff training in Springfield, Virginia. Fall of 85 to spring of 86, junior staff, Springfield, Virginia. Spring of 86 to winter of 87, senior staff, same location. Winter of 87 to the spring of 87, he was executive staff in Cincinnati, Ohio. Fall of 87 to spring of 1988, executive staff, Springfield, Virginia. Spring of 1988 to spring of 1989, executive staff, Atlanta, Georgia. There were brief periods between 1985 and 1989 that I was not employed by Straight, and I may have some of the months wrong above. For 19 years, I gave little thought to my actions as a staff member of Straight Incorporated. Then, in the spring and summer of 2008, I began to interact with Straight survivors and listen to their experiences. As the weeks and months progressed, I became increasingly aware of the damage that I had caused Straight survivors as a staff member. After much reflection on the events of the 1980s, I have become much more aware that many Straight survivors lost their integrity, innocence, sense of self-worth, youth, ability to trust others, family relations, and more as a result of my actions as a staff member. And I deeply regret that I'm responsible for this as a staff member. I realize now that many survivors still suffer from diagnosed psychological disorders such as post-traumatic stress disorder, severe depression, social phobias, panic disorders, etc., caused by the imprisonment in Straight Incorporated, and that many survivors still endure vivid Straight Incorporated dream nightmares, can still hear the screams of children as they were abused, and cannot forget the abuse they personally endured or witnessed as vulnerable children. I'm deeply ashamed of my role in this, including not putting a stop to it. By publishing this letter in a public forum, I publicly acknowledge that Straight Incorporated unjustly committed various crimes, abused children, and utilized extremely unethical practices against innocent young clients, which included, but were not limited to, the following: brainwashing, AAA or AKA, coercive thought reform, physical abuse, usage of illegal and unethical restraints. Children routinely restrain children at the direction of staff for minor infractions, not motivating, not paying attention, etc. Unethical forms of extreme humiliation, including not limited to belt looping, no privacy, watched while urinating, defecating, or bathing, motivating. Food deprivation, peanut butter diets, inadequate portions of food. Sleep deprivation, caused by unwarranted, prolonged daily groups, 12. Others time spent in the building up to at least 3 additional pre- and post-group hours. Lengthy commuting time, and in many cases due to intentionally withholding sleep as punishment for not cooperating to coerce compliance. Verbal abuse, unduly harsh confrontational tactics that included swearing, screaming, yelling, spitting, belittling, humiliating, etc. A child in front of a large group of child clients. Sexual abuse. While I was not aware of this on staff, in recent months I've become aware through the testimony of other straight survivors that this did happen. Psychological abuse, coerced confessions, unjustifiable and lengthy isolation in intakes or timeout rooms, denial of necessary medical care, kidnapping, false imprisonment, accepting clients with little, no drug history, the so-called dry drug theory. Specifically, I was personally responsible for conducting client intakes that resulted in children with little history of drug or alcohol use. Employing uneducated, unprofessional teenage staff. Specifically, I allowed myself to be employed by Straight as a counselor, knowing full well that I had no outside training, no education. Additionally, I apologize for allowing the abuse, unethical practices, and crimes to continue for years, and lending my name to sponsoring, recommending, and endorsing Straight Incorporated, and for admitting children, their siblings, and parents to Straight Incorporated, and for failing to properly and adequately oversee and monitor Straight Incorporated. I regret my decision to go on staff, and I regret my action as a staff member. I made the decision to go on staff, and I made the decision to advance to executive staff. I am responsible for these actions, and I take full responsibility. As a former Straight client myself, I, of all people, should have known better. I'm aware of several former Straight clients who have taken their lives. Many of these people I knew personally. I cannot begin to understand the circumstances of each death, but I have no doubt that some of these deaths, Straight had a role in this. My heart aches for the victims of suicide and their loved ones. I wish I could bring them back. I would like to turn the clock back to 1985 and make better decisions. However, I am unable to undo the damage I've caused. I am unable to make financial restitutions to the former victims as well. However, in recent months, I've had the honor and privilege of interacting with former Straight clients who were victims of my actions and the actions of other Straight staff. It is my hope that these interactions have been a step towards healing the wounds that have remained for 2 decades. Along those lines, there is something I can do. I can make myself available to Straight survivors. If you or someone you know feels it would be productive to communicate privately with me for any reason, please contact the moderator of this website. It is my hope that the other executive staff and administrators take this opportunity to acknowledge and apologize for their part in Straight Incorporated. If any former staff would like to communicate with me privately for any reason, please contact the moderator of this website. In closing, it is my sincere hope that survivors of Straight can find the healing and closure that they need and deserve. I look forward to being a part of that healing. Sincerely, Richard Molinax, the Straight Incorporated staff, 1985 to 1989. January 8, 2011. This is an amendment to the letter of the acknowledgement of apology dated 12/31/2008. He says, "It's been 2 years since I have issued the above letter of acknowledgement and apology. After very careful consideration, I feel it necessary to amend my letter so as to avoid causing any further harm to survivors of Straight Incorporated." In the last paragraph, I stated, there is something I can do. I can make myself available to straight survivors. If you or someone you know feels that it would be productive to communicate privately with me for any reason, please contact the moderator of this website and request that I contact you. I'm happy to do so, especially if it would help in the healing process. In some public postings of the letter, I later added contact information. I believe I know that this was an error in making the commitment for 2 reasons. Number 1, this statement can be interpreted in many ways. One which that I was offering to counsel others on their own experiences in Straight Incorporated. I am most certainly not a mental health professional. I was not a mental health professional in 1989. I lost my place. And it's certainly not one now. I know that's what it was. I did not intend to imply that I'm qualified to or would offer advice, counseling, suggestions, or directions of any kind. Since writing this letter, I've had numerous interactions with survivors regarding the letter. While I have shared my own experiences, I've been cautious never to offer advice, counseling, suggestion, or direction of any kind. Nonetheless, I believe it necessary to amend this letter for this clarification. Number 2, by some estimates, there are over 50,000 former straight clients. Had I considered this 2 years ago, as I should have, I would have not made the offer for private interaction. To the best of my knowledge, I've kept my commitment to interact with survivors thus far. However, extending such an invitation to so many will eventually result in an inability on my part to meet that commitment. I believe that this would be detrimental to survivors and cause yet further harm. I was wrong to make the commitment, and I may eventually not be able to keep. I stand by the public nature of this letter and all other statements it contains, including and especially the second to the last paragraph. Respectfully, Richard Molinax. I remember when Rich wrote this letter of apology. I'm ashamed, maybe not ashamed to say, but I was one of the naysayers. I didn't trust, I didn't believe. You know, I was one that played devil's advocate a little too tough, maybe. But I watched Rich. I watched Rich do just what he said in that letter. Rich was welcomed into a lot of straight survivors' hearts. I respected the man. I went to his service. But at the end of the day, Straight Incorporated consumed him. I agree. He's a saintly in my eyes. He's a legend in our community. Legacy. It's remarkable. The strength that he had to write this letter, and for the time that he spent taking survivors into his heart, he, like I said, no longer walks with us now. This consumed him. On hearing of his death, it rippled through this community. Because one of the reasons that it rattled our cage so much was that somebody that was strong, that everybody took for granted that was okay, completed suicide. This is just one aspect of the story. It's just a peek, you know. We just barely touched looking at Rich through this apology. Other things are in the works. Other videos will come out. And Marion will finish explaining and telling us her story. Because she told me last night she's breaking code silence. And I'm going to help her break that code silence. Break it.